Hey everyone, how are you? This is Making the Movement on the Move. Welcome back to the OurSociety Experiment and our latest candidate conversation. I'm here with Madeline Hoffman, who's running for Senate in the state of New Jersey here. Madeline, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So in the past, Madeline, you've run for office before.
Yes.
You've run for governor before.
Yes.
I believe you ran for
Vice President.
Vice President, right?
Yes.
Ralph Nader, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And that was in the late 1990s. So now it's 2018. You're running for Senate.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're running?
Well, I'm running because I feel there was a need for me to run. I feel that there's a need for alternative political parties, that the Republicans and Democrats have kind of messed things up over time, and they continue to do so. And part of the reason is the amount of money that has been authorized basically, or allowed, permitted to flow from large corporations, political action committees, into the legislative process. And so we have a situation where the Democrats are in one corner and the Republicans are in the other, and they fight. They fight all the time, and they are fighting to do the best for their big donors. They're not fighting in order to protect or do something that will benefit you and me and the 99%, if you want to use the language from the Occupy movement. So I'm running because I want to expose that. I want to challenge that, and I think there are some very important issues around which that needs to happen. Also running because when I ran in the late 1990s, I found that it was a really good way to connect with people and to try to connect people. Say when I ran for New Jersey governor, people who are working for affordable housing, people who are working for a clean environment, people who are fighting against or working for peace, people who are concerned about auto insurance rates and LGBTQ issues and the like. It was a way to it was a vehicle that I could use to try to bring these folks together. May not have known each other, may not have thought that they shared concerns on similar issues, but it was so exciting to see that happen. And so running as a Green, I can be principled. I'm not beholden to corporate money or PAC money. I can connect with people from various constituencies, various movements, and the idea is to build a green wave as an alternative to what we see going on out there.
That's actually really interesting. You mentioned that you worked for nonprofits, including you were the executive director of 2 different nonprofits, right?
Correct.
It was if I'm correct, it was the Grassroots Environmental Organization.
That's correct, yes.
And the New Jersey Peace Action Organization,
correct,
essentially. So how does your experience as an executive director of 2 separate nonprofits, how does that translate into being a senator? Like, what skills do you take from that and bring into a position that you're running for?
Well, that's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. But for the 18 years or so that I was working for the Grassroots Environmental Organization, I was working with citizens groups and community groups and even environmental commissions of local municipalities. You also had to think of the big picture, because if you said, okay, we don't want a garbage incinerator built in Newark, or we don't want at-sea incineration built in Newark, or we don't want a hazardous waste incinerator built in Newark. Okay then, so what do you want? And so we were able to, in building coalitions like that, we were able to put forward a broader vision, a more sustainable economic and environmental vision for how you deal with garbage and toxic waste. So it would be, let's reuse, recycle, and reduce our waste. Let's compost. Let's figure out what the alternative is. For hazardous waste, how can a manufacturer change its processes so that they produce less hazardous waste? How do you control, can you control emissions from a stack? So had to learn science, had to learn politics, had to learn the decision-making process, and you put all that together for an almost 20-year period of time. A lot of hands-on experience I had working with the political system or trying to make the political system work for communities.
It's interesting because Medicare for All, we know, we've known it for a while, but now even the conservative studies have shown that it is the most economically feasible option, right? And really, people often don't really mention, but we have Medicare for All, right? Medicaid for seniors is Medicare for All, right? And it's efficient and it works, and it's worked for years, so it's an interesting thing. And kind of on that option, you mentioned twice now that you've identified as a socialist. So I am curious, do you identify, Marx in his version of socialism had 4 modes of production, right? You had slavery, feudalism, capitalism, and socialism or communism, whatever, that's social option essentially. But one thing he talked about a lot is he kind of frames them as singular systems. So each one has a set of rules that go along with it. And he argued that when you transfer a mode of production, when you go from capitalism to socialism, it happens in a revolutionary manner, typically associated with violence. And Frederick Engel even argued the violence he argued. This is what they argued.
Right.
It is because the property owners would not release their property. So I guess my question is, because I've talked to a number of people who are socialists, I've known a number of the DSAs, and we've had some great debates, and I am curious, are you the school of thought that we need a sudden shift, or is your option more of like a mixed system fueled by more democracy, maybe like a socialized bottom and a middle, then a socialized top, or something like that?
Well, definitely it has to be fueled by more democracy.
Okay.
And whether it's, I'm a little bit afraid of using the word incremental, because
all change is incremental.
Little by little, because you see, and that's another reason why what makes 2018 different from 1998 when I last ran for U.S. Congress, and that is, in these days and times, the word socialism is not the kind of word that you necessarily run from. When I was organizing in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, if I used the word socialism, people would say, okay, thank you very much, slam the door in my face, and that's it. But today you see, starting with, maybe before that, but certainly starting with Bernie Sanders and the lead up to the 2016 election, identifying himself as a democratic socialist, going through Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and some other people who clearly identify as democratic socialists. The idea here is certainly no violence. The Green Party is all about nonviolence and not, against war, the only party that's against war. And so we're not into violent revolution. No, it would be nonviolent. And you see somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she won the primary. There's still her challenger, or the person she was challenging, Crowley. He's still on the ballot, I think, the Working Families Party. And there are people within the Democratic Party who are trying to pull her to the right. Because they don't think, if you're a Democrat, this is not what a Democrat can say. And so one of the other reasons I'm running is that for people like her, and there are many more today than there were 20 years ago, who are willing to say, I'm a democratic socialist, they need somebody in Congress who's going to pull them over more towards the left. Or sometimes labels like right and left and Marxist and socialist, they get in the way of talking about what we really want to see. And I think what we really want to see is a more equitable society. We don't want 48 million people uninsured. The Affordable Care Act, I benefit from that, but I don't know for how much longer I can, because the prices do keep going up. The solution isn't what the Republicans have and Donald Trump have proposed, But there are real problems with this program, which is still very heavily subsidized by private industry. It was a windfall for the private health insurance industry. So that's not a sustainable long-term solution, in my opinion. And so to take the programs that are working and to expand them, that's part of what it means to me to be socialist, to want equal, not equal opportunity, but equal access and receipt of healthcare and other benefits like that.
I think you could argue for equal access to opportunity. I think the big criticism that people give to socialism is that I think is a bunk argument, but the argument is that some people will try to say equality of outcomes, right? Equality of outcomes doesn't make any sense because there's always going to be the individual. You're not going to have a level playing field where everyone has the same effort and the same outcome, but equality of access to those opportunities.
Well, but that sounds very much like what we have today, and so I remember when I was running for in 1996 and 97, used to have debates within the Green Party. Can capitalism have a human face? And there were people, we used to have intense arguments, who'd say, yes, problem is unfettered capitalism, and so it's eliminating people along the way. The competition is too steep, and there's a whole pool of people that can't make it. So let's make capitalism more human. I don't think you can do that because the logic of capitalism is profit. And so we need to change the paradigm, if you will.
Sure.
We need to take it out of profit and put it into a situation. For example, when I was driving through Camden yesterday, we shouldn't have anybody homeless. Not in this country, not anywhere. The income gap between rich and poor in this country keeps widening. The income gap between the wealthier countries and the poorer countries keeps widening around the world. I think the last statistic I saw, 84 individuals, the top 84 in terms of income and assets, own more than the bottom half of the world's population. And we have 7 billion people, so that's 3.5 billion people. And you've got 84, 3 or 4 of whom are in the same family, who possess more wealth than 3.5 billion people. And that to me is, it's not about privilege, it's not about, oh, I'm more entitled to it than you. It's not about racism, oh, I'm a colonial power, and we conquered your country and now we have access to the resources. No, we have to look at it from the standpoint of we all are entitled to have affordable housing. We're all entitled to have access, to not just access, but to be covered under a healthcare system that takes care of what we need. We all are entitled to food, make sure we have enough to eat. There shouldn't be anybody hungry, there shouldn't be anybody homeless.
For people at home, you've run for office now, this is your third time, and fourth time, and you typically are outside the mainstream, so you typically have a more, I think, uphill battle because of the congestion and the intentional barriers to entry with the system. What would you say for someone at home who's watching this video? Your message resonates with them. They want to kind of get involved in office, and we don't have to go into too much detail, but just basically, what are some tips you would give them at home if someone wanted to run for office, on a platform that is similar to yours or even different, but just running for office? What would you recommend?
Well, I would recommend that they do it.
Okay.
That no hesitation, that people who want to run for office should run, but that they also understand what the political landscape is when they do, and that two things. One, there's something called clean elections that has been used in about 4 or 5 states, maybe more, and other options where they run without accepting the big money. Because once you accept the big money, you're really limited in terms of how much you can do and what you can say.
Okay.
You have to sort of make sure that the person or the company, corporation or PAC that gives you the big money, you have to make sure they're happy. And it's like coming out of school with a massive debt. Are you going to work for a nonprofit, or are you going to try to get a job where you can make back a lot of money every year so you can pay back your debt? You're going to owe a debt to somebody who gives you big money. Also, I would say, and I was just looking at some figures today, the percentage of people who voted in New Jersey, percentage of people eligible to vote who voted in the gubernatorial election, no more than 37%.
It was 37. We wrote about that.
37%. That means 63% of the people stayed home. And I know, and I say this to my students too in my political science class, I ask them, what do you think of politics? I can't stand it. They're all liars. I'm turned off. They don't speak to me. And I say, I understand. I know what you're talking about. So what I would say to people who want to run, if all of us who didn't vote, or who aren't registered as a Democrat or a Republican, or even as a Green or a Libertarian, if we all created our own, if we came up with a party that reflected what we needed, call it a green wave if you will, but if we created a party that addressed our needs, then we have the power to take charge, really. We have the numbers. We have the numbers is what
Sure.
I mean.
Yeah.
We have the numbers to do it. So don't feel, what I would say is, please don't feel like you don't have a voice, because there's a lot of room out there. The Democrats and Republicans have sewn up, but 40%, if that, of the population eligible for voting, so eligible to vote. So there's a lot of room for alternatives, and that would be my advice. Don't turn off, close your door, stay in your room, watch video games all night, and don't get engaged.
Play video games.
Play video games, right. Watch videos and play video games. Get engaged with the political process, and hook up with people who care about addressing needs of people who are being ignored and left out of the process.
So that's a nice message, everyone. Madeline Hoffman again, everyone, here at the OurSociety Experiment. You can check out Madeline's link to her OurSociety profile in the video below. We'll also place it in the description. Thanks so much for tuning in to this OurSociety's Candid Conversation. Madeline, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Great.
And I hope that I was informative.
I think so. I think we got a lot of information. I think it'll be very important for a lot of people. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.